don't buy and use a material just because your friend, neighbor, or family member is using it and loves it. It may be a great fit for them, but it might be a horrible one for you. I have seen this happen on multiple occasions, and it made homeschooling very frustrating for the parent teaching and the children. Consider the following questions before looking for options. First, if you had to put your child in school, but could choose from any type of school experience imaginable, what would it be like? Would it be project interest-based or mapped out by a curriculum, hands-on experiences, mostly desk work, travel-oriented, academically rigorous? How would learning be documented? Tests, projects, presentations? Would it be year-round, only mornings, long summer vacation, etc.? Write down in as much detail as you can your ideal education experience. Have this in mind as we continue. By the way, it's okay if your vision changes over time. I know mine did. Now at this point, many websites or homeschool guides talk about the 5 homeschool styles or the 10 homeschool methods. Then they go on to describe them and try to help you figure out which one of them you fit into. Kind of like those personality tests you had to do in college or elsewhere. But the truth is, there are as many homeschool styles as there are homeschool families, and you really don't need to fit into any of them to get yourself going. To figure out what works best for you, consider this as the parent doing the homeschooling. First off, which do you prefer? Getting directly involved in learning with your children, or more of a student-independent type homeschool, or do you prefer a mix of both? Second, this one being kind of like the previous one, level of parenting instruction. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to be directly teaching your children? If you love the idea and want to be in the learning with them, you would be a 10. If you prefer to only do what is absolutely necessary, mostly supervising, then go toward 1. What subjects are you super passionate about? On the other hand, what subjects do you dislike greatly and can't imagine having to teach them? For example, I hear a lot of people refer to math this way, or maybe writing, or science, etc. Next, what are some of your personal needs? Do you love being at home and don't feel you need to go out much? Or do you like to get out a lot and interact with people? Do you have income needs that require you to work while homeschooling your children? How does that affect your availability and the level of independence you need from your kids? Do you love structure and consistency, or do you prefer variety and spontaneity? Or are you a mix of both, and to what extent? Next, what kind of budget do you have available for homeschooling resources? Now, thinking about homeschooling as a whole, what things make you cringe about the thought of homeschooling? Maybe crafts or clutter? And what things get you super excited about the idea of homeschooling? Now let's turn the focus to some questions about your children. 1, how many children do you have and how old are they? Obviously, homeschooling is probably going to look different if you have a toddler in the house, or if you have only high schoolers in the house. Do your children love being at home or going out? Consider their personality and their learning styles. Now, if you don't know what learning styles are, don't worry, you don't need to. I'm going to give you some descriptors to help you think through that. Are they very talkative? Are they active? Do they like to move a lot? Their movement is actually very beneficial. Does your child have a lot of energy? Or perhaps your child is very reflective, thinks about things for a long time. They're observant. Or do they like to learn hands-on? Are they self-motivated? Do they love learning through listening to books, etc.? Do they love exploring? You get the idea. Think about your child and how you see them learning the most and what their personality is like. Now, as another side note to this point though, if you don't know how to answer this question, don't panic. Just keep observing your child through the next year or two, and you'll get more clarity as you go through this homeschool journey. Next question. What did or do each member of your family love and hate about school and or learning each subject? Consider how you enjoyed learning each subject most. For example, I learned the most in history and enjoyed it the most when I got to read historical fiction books. If your children haven't been in a traditional school setting because they're still small, base this on your observations. But if your children are older, and especially if they have already attended a school, interview them on this, ask them about it, and let them give you the answer. So now that you've taken time to think through these questions, to think through what your family is like, what each child is like, what your personal needs are, what your children's needs are, and you know your state regulations, you can begin to consider what scenarios and types of material may work best for your family. A few examples are, some states specify teaching your children in your home. Many also specify, as we saw in the New York example, 180 school days or 900 school hours or both. But if you're a people person who likes to get out of the house a lot, being at home all day, 5 days a week, may feel very stifling. In this case, considering a year-round school calendar that allows you to perhaps only do school 4 days a week or 4 hours a day, and then be able to spend the rest of the time out with your kids may be the right fit for your crew. Another example is I recognized I really enjoyed learning about history through historical fiction and biographies like I mentioned before. I kept that in mind when I started researching curricula. In that process, I looked for texts that were engaging because they read like a story. In fact, I actually did find a social studies curriculum that included fiction books to support the time periods being learned about. A final example is maybe you like the concept of teaching unit studies, but you also prefer your kids to mostly be independent in their studies, or you realize that in your scenario, it just isn't realistic for one reason or another. Then you keep that in mind to look for something that will be a better fit.